One way to look at it is that goods we need are cheap and easily replaced when they wear out. Another way to look at it is why is so much of what we buy so poorly made or effectively disposable? And how could it possibly be sustainable? Joining us now on all of that from London, Ontario, Alyssa Santivani, professor in the Faculty of Information and Media Studies at Western University and an expert on the right to repair. And on the line in the provincial capital, Kelly Drennan, founding executive director of Fashion Takes Action. Welcome to you both, and thank you so much for joining me on the program tonight. To understand how we got here, I think we do need to take a little trip back in time, about mid-1700s to late 1700s. That is the Industrial Revolution. Kelly, some experts blame the Industrial Revolution for the decline of clothing quality. What role did it play?
Well, I don't know that it went back that far, but definitely once we started seeing plastic being used, that is definitely when we saw the decline in clothing. Synthetic fibers used to make things like polyester, spandex, acrylic, nylon, that actually is all derived from crude oil. So it's all plastic that we're wearing. And it's a lot cheaper to purchase yarn or fabric made from synthetics than it is to, say, buy wool or linen or cotton or silk.
Of course, we know this term fast fashion, and I'm curious, you have the inside track in looking at how, materials are made, and I'm curious, are clothing manufacturers intentionally making their products less durable so people have to buy more?
Well, that's a pretty scary thought, but, and I wouldn't blanket the whole industry for, saying that they're doing that, but there are certainly some brands, without naming names, that are in that ultra fast fashion category that are selling products that are, $5 and less. So not only, are those clothing going to be, made from, obsolescence, designed with obsolescence in mind, but it's also a matter of, what's the environmental impact? What's the social impact? There's absolutely no way somebody was paid to make that garment.
Alyssa, I want to change over and talk about tech. The lifespan of tech products, has it become shorter over time? I feel like I've had conversations with colleagues and friends who have said, I just bought a washer and dryer, and it's only lasted me 2 years, or some sort of tech device. It just seems everyone has an anecdotal story. Is that the case?
That's so true, and I hear that as well in my research. What this is dealing with is this idea of planned obsolescence, which is that manufacturers are increasingly sort of designing in death dates into the products that they manufacture, or prematurely shortening the useful life of the products that they make. And this is a common tactic that manufacturers use to increase profits by accelerating turnover, by generating new sales, or if they're a manufacturer that's managed to capture the downstream repair market by sort of forcing repairs earlier than they might otherwise be necessary.
Let's talk a little bit about a death date. I think when you say that, the first thing I think of is a best before date. How does that compare?
Yeah, so a best before date is like used on sort of consumables like food. We're concerned there with safety. That doesn't really apply in the tech space. So the death date here is really just about manufacturers sort of figuring out, how quickly they can degrade the quality of a product, whether that's through, a battery lifespan declining, or if it's a technology that's sort of connected to the Internet of Things. Manufacturers can actually, reach out to your device in your home and stop it from working. And so safety here is not really a concern. It's really fundamentally about increasing profits.
And on the topic of planned obsolescence, how prevalent is it? Are there a few bad players, or is this an industry-wide problem in the tech industry?
So I would say that it's pretty prevalent. I wouldn't say that every single manufacturer is guilty of this practice, but I think that the vast majority are. What I'm interested in, and what I've been starting to see, particularly in companies located in Europe, is that some manufacturers are seeing a benefit to distinguishing themselves on the marketplace by making products that are more durable, that last longer, that are more repairable. And so we can look to companies like Framework, which makes laptops, and Fairphone, which makes cell phones, for some, like, I would say, positive or optimistic signs. These products are not yet available in North America, but hopefully they'll be here soon.
All right. Kelly, I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between consumers and companies. Do consumers dictate how companies manufacture their products, or do companies dictate how we purchase clothing?
Well, yeah, it's a little bit chicken and egg. Voting with our dollar, right? So however we choose to spend our money will actually dictate to industry showing demand for certain products. And so when we go out there and buy all this fast fashion, if we see something that's $9.99 and we buy 4 of them, we're programmed to sort of look for these deals, and we get that hit of like that dopamine hit when we do. So that definitely sends a message to the industry. But at the same time, the industry is overproducing. There's 100 billion new garments made every single year. So that's actually 15 garments per person on the planet every single year. And today we actually buy 60% more clothes than we did just 20 years ago.
Wow.
And we keep them for half as long. And a lot of that is driven by this planned obsolescence, for sure. Like, the quality of these garments has totally degraded, and after a few washes or wears, they fall apart. Or because of really fast trend turnarounds, they're constantly being dictated to us. What's in this season is out next season. And so to keep up with the Joneses, we constantly have to be buying products. So it's this sort of, endless loop or cycle of overproduction and overconsumption.
Alyssa, talk to me a little bit about the right to repair. What is that?
Sure. So the right to repair is a social movement that seeks to sort of reclaim our right to fix the things that we own. The sort of principal demands that right to repair advocates are making is that manufacturers need to make their products fixable, that they need to make replacement parts and specialized tools available, and also that they need to make the information resources like manuals, guides, schematics that one would need to have access to be able to make repairs available as well.
And give us some examples of in what ways companies are impeding the repair of some of their products.
Yeah, so there are a number of ways that companies are impeding repair of their products. And I guess I would start by saying repair is being impeded sort of across sectors. So it certainly is being impeded in the context of consumer goods and consumer products, but it's also being impeded in other industries as well. So in terms of agricultural equipment, it's being impeded in terms of medical devices and equipment, in terms of automotive, in terms of even, military defense equipment. So the right to repair is being impeded sort of across the board. And in terms of the sort of specific ways in which it's being impeded, in my work, I talk about sort of 6 big categories or ways that that manufacturers are impeding. One way is through design choices. So design can either, promote repairability or undermine it. So we can think about, our cars have a hood that lets us have access to the engine. Our smartphones don't, right? So fixing the screen on our smartphone when it breaks is typically expensive and inconvenient, even though that this is a really common point of breakage. Another way in which repair is impeded is through sort of economic means. And here I'm mostly talking about the ways in which manufacturers or companies will sort of incentivize replacement over repair using kind of like very sophisticated and savvy pricing models. Material asymmetries or like those restrictions on access to replacement parts and tools is another way that it's impeded. Similarly, restricting access to those informational resources I was mentioning is another way. And then laws are also major impediments, in particular intellectual property law, copyright law, competition law, and then at the provincial level, contract law. And then finally, various social factors. So a little bit of what Kelly was talking about in terms of our own sort of motivations for consuming or repairing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just wanted to jump off that with respect to repair, because unlike tech, the average person with clothing should be able to do their own repairs. But the problem here is that a lot of us don't really know how to do that anymore. We have a school program. We go into the classrooms and we ask young people, show of hands, how many of you know how to use a needle and thread? And very few of them will actually put up their hand. And so when it comes to clothing, if you think about a garment that you spent $10 on, the cost to repair that garment, if you were to take it to a professional, could be 2-3 times what you paid for that garment.
I'm going to pick up on your point as well, Kelly. And I want to ask you, there was a time when people would get their clothing custom made at a tailor. Then department stores took over and you could buy your suits and dresses off the rack. They're mass produced. And then now we're in a digital sphere. Things are online. How much do companies get away from the fact that we actually don't see our products, touch our products? And in a way, do they get away with giving us sort of a lesser quality material?
Absolutely. I think if you are familiar with a brand, say before this sort of rise of online shopping, then you actually, your fit, you can rely on the quality of the garment. But there's a lot of new online only fast fashion brands. And yes, you absolutely don't really know what you're buying. Not only do you not know the quality of it, but you really don't even know the fit. And the problem there from the environmental perspective is that a lot of companies are offering free shipping. And so what we're seeing is people buying their 2 or 3 different sizes and then sending back the ones that don't fit and keeping the one that does. But the problem is the ones that don't fit and that get sent back are actually going into the landfill. They're not going back onto the shelves because the cost to restock that item is actually higher than the value of the garment itself.
You talk about cost. Inflation is high right now. And, well-made clothing is not cheap. It's quite expensive. Kelly, is there a way to shop sustainably and be on a budget?
100%. Yeah. I mean, going out and buying something new and that was sustainably made, definitely you're going to be paying a premium because it represents the true cost of that garment. The best thing is, I love saying this, is that the most sustainable garment is the one that's actually already in your closet. So before you actually go out and buy something, take a look, what's in your closet already? We wear 20% of our closet 80% of the time. So there's 80% sitting in that closet that you barely ever wear. So that's the first thing that we should be doing. And then we have something called the 7 R's that we've created. Everybody knows the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, recycle. We've inserted a few more to help consumers really think about how they can be sustainable or circular when it comes to their wardrobe. And so reusing clothes is the second best thing to reducing. And that means buying secondhand, donating, going to a clothing swap, all of that is very affordable compared to buying new. And then also repair is another R. Rent is another great way, especially for a special occasion where you're maybe going to wear something once. Why not rent it for a fraction of the cost? And repurpose is another great way to take an old garment and turn it into something new on a budget. So definitely a lot of ways that you can be sustainable without having to go out and buy something new.
All right. We talked about copyright laws. Alyssa, there aren't any right to repair laws in Canada, but there are 2 bills under consideration. Bill C-244 and Bill C-294. They're both private members' bills that amend portions of the Copyright Act to allow the circumvention of technological protection measures. Bill C-244 would allow the circumvention for diagnosis, maintenance, and repair, and Bill C-294 allows circumvention for interoperability. Now, Alyssa, would these bills ultimately give consumers the right to repair?
Yeah, that's a great question. So these I see these bills as being really good steps in the right direction. Particularly with Bill C-244, I think that's a great bill in terms of sort of providing a wide berth for repair activities, and interoperability relates to repair, but actually I think has benefits that extend far beyond repair as well. So these are great bills. What I would say is that, the impediments to repair, like I mentioned earlier, have some legal elements, but they have, lots of elements as well that are unrelated. So even if we just sort of stick to the legal context, we would also need to really see some changes made to competition law. A lot of what we're seeing now that is a restriction on repair is really fundamentally a kind of anti-competitive behavior that copyright law is not really well suited to be able to ameliorate. In addition, we have issues around things like licenses, terms of use, warranties, which fall under provincial jurisdiction. And so what I would say is these bills are great. The federal government should sort of make a clear stand that these are important priorities. I would like to see follow-up with competition law, and then that would sort of, I think, enable the provinces to make some positive changes at the provincial level as well.
All right, we have less than a minute left, and I have one question for both of you. Kelly, start off with you. How can consumers take back control when it comes to their purchasing decisions and taking care of their items?
Well, I think the first part is to, do your research when you're actually buying something. Look into the company and make sure that, if they have sustainability claims, that they actually can back those claims up. Read the reviews of other customers about the products. And then, in terms of taking care of our items, getting to stains right away, not overwashing our clothes, because every time we wash them, the friction will actually wear the fabric down. It'll fade the color. So there's lots of things that we can be doing to just keep our clothes in use for as long as possible. And ultimately, that's going to be the best from an economic perspective too.
Alyssa, you get the last word.
Great. Yeah, I would say that, it's important for consumers to be more cognizant maybe of their habits of consumption, maybe pause before they buy that sort of sophisticated, high-tech computerized thing, which will generally be less repairable. There's also a lot of local grassroots efforts in many locations throughout Canada and elsewhere, like repair cafes and thing libraries. And these are great ways to sort of become engaged in the community. But I would also say that, the issues underlying the problems that we're talking about here are not going to be solved, I think, through individual action. These are really collective problems. And so I don't want to sort of emphasize too much the responsibility of individual consumers. I think that what we need to do is sort of advocate for political and policy changes that will help support a more sort of systemic kind of solution to these problems.
All right, we are going to leave it there. Alyssa, Kelly, thank you so much for your time. Learned a lot. The one takeaway for me is I definitely need to go learn how to sew a button. So that's the first stop. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.